Hi, my name is Aajonus Vonderplanitz, and I was a fellow who was dying of terminal blood and bone cancers, which is multiple myeloma, stomach cancer. It began with that. And I reversed it, just with eating food, no supplements, anything like that. For those who have, has everybody read my book, or is there some who haven't? Okay. I was a very sickly child. I grew up in an abusive household with a brother who pretty much abused me every day. And the tremendous amount of stress was a leech on my entire nutritive system, the enzymes and the hormones. So I grew up very weak. I could not play sports. By the time I was 10, I had peritonitis, which is usually a terminal infection in the intestines, bleeding usually. Mine was bleeding. It was misdiagnosed as appendicitis, and while the doctors were there, they thought that they would take the appendix out anyway, just in case it would cause me problems later, because they don't have a clue what it's for. They'll take something. And then I was diagnosed with juvenile diabetes by the time I was 13. And started on insulin within a year. Thank you. By the time I was 15, I came down with angina pectoris so badly that I would pass out in class. It would arrest my breathing. The pains were so sharp that my left arm would collapse and I'd fall to the floor. And usually they just left me lying there for about 20 minutes on the floor until I came out of it, because there's nothing they could do. They ran EKGs, EEGs, everything. And they basically thought it was psychosomatic. Anything that they cannot diagnose or register has become psychosomatic. Anybody see that film called Safe? Interesting film. Julianne Moore plays the lead, and it's about a woman who has a lot of health problems. All of a sudden she becomes chemically very sensitive. She's around any household chemical, her nose starts bleeding instantly. All of these symptoms all of a sudden hit all at one time. She became so allergic. Doctors could not register or diagnose anything, so they said it was psychosomatic. This is pretty prevalent right now. Well, I had it back when I was about 15 years old. If my mother got on anything with ammonia on it, I'd have a seizure, an angina attack. It's not really a seizure because it didn't involve the brain, but it would black me out like a seizure did. The intensity of the pain. By the time I was 19, I had developed an ulcer. That became tumorous through the treatments. Now, the treatment was, of course, eating lots of chalky anti-acid solution called Maalox. And, going through a couple of bottles of that a week, I ended up with a tumor on that ulcer. So they decided to perform a vagotomyopaloplasty on me, which means that they went and severed the vagus nerves to the stomach so I would not secrete any hydrochloric acid, which means that basically I would not be able to digest anything anymore. And of course they said anything raw definitely would not be able to handle, so never eat any raw foods. The surgery created even more tumorous matter. The incision, which is from here to here, became keloided, which means it's a tumor but without the malignancy because it doesn't reflect cancer hormones in cancer tissue, cancer cells. But it got to be about 2 inches, 1 3/4 to 2 inches in diameter, varying up and down, and about a 1/2 inch to 3/4 of an inch thick. all the way through to my stomach. They radiated that to stop the growth. And of course, all the radiation in this area affected my spine, and it affected my bone marrow all over, and I ended up with multiple myeloma, which is cancer of the blood and bone. Then they said, oops, now we have to go in and poison you. They didn't say poison you. We have to go in and give you chemotherapy, which means we will kill the cancer cells, and you'll have a better chance of living. So I endured that for about 3 months and learned that it was poison. Because every time I went through a chemotherapy session, I was vomiting for days, blood, everything. Could not hold anything down. By the end of that 3 months, I said, that's it. You guys are definitely killing me. I'm sure I had a better chance before, and now I doubt that I have a chance. And the chance for multiple myeloma is about 0.01% of people survive multiple myeloma. It's the worst cancer there is. When I stopped the chemotherapy, I was pretty much an invalid. I couldn't leave a toilet for more than 5 minutes without a diaper. I was chronically fatigued. I usually crawled to the bathroom on my hands and knees. I crawled to the kitchen to get anything. I crawled around the house. People had to get things for me. There was a fellow who was a volunteer at the hospice. Those wonderful people who make you die as comfortably, help you die as comfortably as possible. He came over with a little booklet, must have been 80 to 86 pages, about this woman who had cured herself of cervical or uterine cancer by eating a gallon of carrot juice a day. I balked at it, thought how ridiculous, and I read it and tried it. And I had been born with dyslexia and severe autism. I really didn't learn to communicate with other children until I was in my mid-teens. Mainly because I could not read. If I looked at the printed page, I got vertigo, and I'd instantly want to vomit. So I actually could not read, and I was ridiculed all through, childhood. So I cheated my way through school, and by being able to copy symbols. So I'd look at somebody's paper and copy those symbols. Had not a clue what they meant, but I could copy the symbols. It made me a great artist, visual artist. Made a lot of money as a visual artist. It was really handy. But when I drank the carrot juice, and here I'm 21 years old, given a few months to live, when I drank the carrot juice, the dyslexia disappeared. The nausea went away. I could look at a printed page and it would be stable. So I went out and bought about $110 worth of books. And in 1969, that was a lot of books. I did nothing in that 6 weeks but read. And it was phenomenal. Of course, I had to use the dictionary a lot because there's a lot of words I didn't understand, in the written form. Sometimes I'd look up the enunciation or the pronunciation of the word, then I'd say, oh, I know that word. And I pretty much could figure it out because I was pretty intuitive as a child. I knew what people meant, even though I didn't know language very well. So anyway, the dyslexia went away, and I could read, and I read, and mainly on nutrition. The carrot juice did not put my cancers in remission, but they certainly helped my brain and nervous system function well. And the more I got into diet, I read other people who had cured themselves of macrobiotic diet, cured themselves. That's a good thing to cure yourself of, is a macrobiotic. Cured themselves of cancer on a macrobiotic diet. So they thought. And it probably did work for some people. And all other types of diets. I took a look at a lot. named and unnamed. And the frequency of reversal of cancer, any disease, was pretty minimal in all of them. I needed to get well, so I went to extremes, and I went on macrobiotic diet for about a year and a half. Strict, to the letter, percentage-wise, scale, the whole bit. Something I forgot to mention, I also had psoriasis right before I had cancer, sores that would not heal. After the treatments, the sores became so severe that my face looked like raw hamburger when I got acne. And let me tell you, after chemotherapy, you have a lot of acne because there are lots of poisons that are trying to come out through the skin. Also got bursitis from the chemotherapy and radiation treatments. Does anybody have bursitis? Had experience with it? Have you ever had toothaches? Put a toothache in a bursa. Bursas are little sacs that feed the joints. And I had it in the feet terribly, and I could not walk. UCLA medical team, the experts, the elders, said that I would probably never be able to walk again, and I would never be able to wear shoes again. By eating tremendous amounts of raw fat, by figuring out, I went in and I studied physiology and biochemistry, when I needed it and where I needed it. So I studied the Bursa. I studied how the fluids were manufactured in the body. And then I went and said, okay, what I need is lots of fats. Raw fats, of course, so all the vitamins and enzymes and everything would be present. None of the minerals would be cauterized and unable to be absorbed or be absorbed. And they wouldn't be glass or hardened substances. So I ate tremendous amounts of avocado and raw butter and raw milks. The bursitis never came back. I experienced it maybe for another 10 days, and it was gone. I never had it again. And that was when I was about 23 or 24 years old. I'm 51 now. So I experimented with a lot of different foods along the way, finding out how to get the body well. Some things aren't as obvious. You know, I could go and say, well, the fluid, the fluid in the bursa is almost 92% fat. Pretty simple. Eat lots of fats. Some other things were not. Bone problems. Because I had cancer of the blood and bones, my marrow was affected and the hard tissue was affected. I had some help with, the psychic realm and combining lots of fats with pineapple. And I found that combining that could mend bone breaks and marrow where nothing else could before. The science had never investigated it nutritionally because they seem to be predominantly focused on having a product to sell or to administer. It's not about helping you get well in a natural way. If it's not lucrative, it's really not fundable because most of your funding comes from pharmaceutical houses and chemical companies who sell the pharmaceutical companies the petroleum products to help make these substances. Just a little divergence here. Do you know that there's only one company in the world that manufactures natural supplements? And what they do is they have these vats of bacteria, and they put a certain substance in, and that bacteria reacts with it, whether it's vitamin C, whether it's vitamin E, whether it's a mineral, no matter what it is. So it's pre-utilized by a bacteria, which provides lots of enzymes. However, because along some of the steps along the way to bring it to that point are altered, it still damages some of the nutrient value. Then when they dehydrate it, of course, it renders the enzymes inactive again, and then feed it to a plant and then eat it. And you'll get a lot of substance. With my research and my lab tests, I didn't do them personally. I paid a laboratory in the San Fernando Valley a lot of money to do the research, and they found that only 2 to 12% of supplements are utilized. That means that 98 to 82% of any supplement you're taking has to be altered and removed from the system. That's a lot of work. That takes a lot of nutrients. So if you're deficient in a particular area, it's better to find the food which will supply it, and then you'll utilize as much as you need within that food, substance and source, without the toxicity.
How much nutrition is utilized from food?
Usually 98%, 92 to 9, depending upon your digestion, of course. If your small intestine is impacted and the bacteria doesn't grow properly, then of course your ability to absorb and utilize certain nutrients and the quantity or volume of that food will be reduced, in accordance with that. So anyway, I experimented, and I went on a vegetarian diet for 6 years. Raw food, fruitarian, vegetarian diet. I was a die-hard evangelistic one. You were a murderer if you ate meat. And I would let you know it, and I would feed you with guilt along with it.
I've been there.
I could tell, that's why I directed at you.
He's preaching to the choir.
So, I went out, I felt a lot better. I mean, it did cleanse me. A vegetarian fruitarian diet did cleanse a lot of the garbage out of my system. It made me feel better. It provided enzymes. Of course, the high amount of sugar made me manic all the time, and I thought that was tremendous. Because, gosh, I had all this energy. I was manic. That's okay. That's happiness. So, after living outdoors for 3 years, and the strenuousness of living outdoors, they say the strenuousness of living in the city psychologically is traumatic, and I laugh. I laugh at it because going from temperature change and wind factors from, let's say, 80 degrees in midday down to 30 degrees at night, 27 degrees at night, that kind of change on the body is terrific. You understand very quickly what urination is about, what drinking water is about, or eating lots of, fluid-laden foods is all about. Because basically, our kidneys, all they do is filter out the red blood cells. They don't filter out anything else. If the kidney had to filter out everything that needed to be filtered out, the kidneys would be the size of your entire body. So the one thing the kidneys do is separate out the red blood cells so you don't die, so you don't get anemic. That means all of the proteins, all of the enzymes, all of the bacteria, all of the toxins, anything that is in the blood is in the urine with mainly one added factor, ammonia. That's part of the separation factor. So your urine is your blood without a lot of red blood cells with a little bit of ammonia added to it. So that's why those people in India who don't get much meat, they say drink your urine. Because it recycles your protein, it recycles your vitamins, it recycles everything. So your blood is full of good rich nutrients you can take back in the urine, and you'll be a lot healthier. I doing experiments with that. People did fasts for up to 31 days, drinking just water or just urine, one or the other. The people who drank just water became very anemic, very weak, at chronic fatigue by the end of the 31-day fast, 30 to 31. The people who drank the urine maintained about a third more weight than the people who drank just the water. None of them were fatigued. None of them had the ringing in their ears and the high blood sugar problems when they went back on the food. So the urine is basically blood without the red blood cells. So it's very concentrated and very nutritious.
Did they drink only urine, or did they drink any water?
Only urine. Only urine, yeah.
Did they drink all their urine?
Yes, all their urine. Their breath was horrendous, but they were healthier. But these are part of the experiments. I'm just sharing some of the experiments that I didn't put in the book with you, since most of you have read it. At the end of that 3 years of living outdoors, which was very strenuous, my multiple myeloma resurged again. My joints were in incredible pain. My bones, I was weak again. I could barely take care of myself, so I decided to die. I went out to an old Indian burial ground to fast myself to death. Now, I had fasted up to 41 days before this, so I knew it was going to take a long time to kill me. I was not going to drink my urine. I would only drink water so that it would be quicker. So there were some coyotes in the canyon, and they befriended me and introduced me to eating raw meat. I thought that they were doing it to kill me, to give me a fast death, because in my family, my father's an inventor, my mother's an RN. I have 8 aunts and uncles who are RNs, 3 uncles who are doctors. Well, 2 are now dead. Only 1 is living, and he lives on Medicare because he cannot function anymore. These are doctors. And because I was raised in that kind of intense academic environment, they always taught me to be afraid of bacteria. So they always warned me that never touch a wild rabbit, especially during the spring and summer season, because it contains a bacteria that will kill a human being. So when I took this rabbit, I thought for sure, here's a quick way to death, maybe a little painful from what was described to me with lots of intense cramping and diarrhea, but so what? I'd been through that before with the chemotherapy. It couldn't be any worse than that, and this will surely kill me. So I hadn't eaten meat in 6 years, almost 6 years and 3 months. And I picked up that rabbit and I ate it, and of course it came right back up because I had all the guilt to go through, about killing animals and, defying nature and spirituality and all of that. So it came back, so I psyched myself out and I said, no, I'm not going to suffer anymore. This is it. So I psyched myself up to eat that rabbit, and I sat down eating it. It was nauseating. It was terrible. I kept wanting to vomit. But I had good training from my parents, because they'd say, eat that, eat that, eat that, eat that. You cannot leave the table until you eat that. And anything that I ate, especially cooked vegetables, made me want to vomit. Peas and broccoli especially. I mean, just Brussels sprouts too. Oh my God. And I had to wash it down with milk. And sometimes, if I were so sensitive that day, I'd have to spit it in the milk and hope it didn't go off to the side so everybody could see it. And then I'd dump it down the sink later. But they made me stay at the table for sometimes an hour and a half while they went and watched TV. to eat this stuff. So I was used to that. So when I got the rabbit, I took that early training and forced myself to swallow. The more I ate, all of a sudden it started tasting phenomenal. And I started eating. I ate 3.5 pounds of that young jackrabbit, probably a year old, about 7.5 pounds. So I ate 3.5 pounds of it, then the coyotes ate the rest of it. And I went back to my campsite to die. So I laid down, and I'd had some near-death experiences before, and I'd left my body, and I knew the euphoria of it. Went all the way through the tunnel, which was to me the sun. And this is the way I felt when I laid down after eating the rabbit. I was leaving my body. I felt so great. I woke up the next morning, still there, still in my body, and feeling energetic. And I thought, uh-oh, something is really weird is happening. My parents and all the science and even the biology professor told me about that toxic, deadly wild rabbit. I'm having no cramps, no intestinal problems at all. I feel pretty good. Probably had the first good night's sleep of my life with no nightmares. And I'm wondering what the hell's going on. It took me 3 days to realize it was the rabbit, eating it raw. So then I killed rattlesnakes. I was walking along and it dawned on me, and there's a rattlesnake. I thought, oh, I'll eat him. So I stepped on his head. He was a sidewinder. I stepped on his head. I picked him up. I remembered how the Indians did it. Pick him up by the tail and you swing him around, and I popped their head off, and the head goes flying over. And it worked. It worked. So I skinned it and ate it. And it does not taste like chicken. It tastes like fish. And it is very hard. And you have to cut it like carpaccio in very, very thin slices so that you can eat it. But it was quite delicious. Tasted a little like swordfish. So then I started getting eggs, and then I went down, goats for this farmer. I started doing chores to get chickens, and started eating all of these things that were taboo, that were non-spiritual, that would damn me forever. And I was getting well. And I went back to Los Angeles to spread the word. They said, you're out of your mind. You have really lost it this time. And basically, I lost most of my friends. And I had to start a whole new network. And plus, I had to experiment with what I was doing over a long period of time, because who knows, those germs could get me later. All those E. coli, all those salmonella, trichinosis, the campylobacter, certainly we got to get them. They'll get you. So I went through years and years and years being terrified of what I was eating, what it was going to do to me in the long run. But with all of the support that the actual results gave me, encouraged me to do it. So I was neurotic, like most of us, not knowing what to do, wanting to do it, not knowing what to do. So I was doing it, afraid, doing it, afraid, doing it, afraid, constantly. After 20 years, I realized, hey, I don't have any reason to be afraid. Think about it. You had your vagus nerve cut. You have no hydrochloric acid dumping into there. So it's not the hydrochloric acid destroying those bacteria that are preventing you from having a problem, which everybody has been saying. Sometimes I'm slow. I could have relaxed much earlier. It wouldn't have taken me 20 years to relax about it. Now I say, give me the bacteria. You don't want it, I'll take it. Give me rotten meat, I'll eat it. They basically will get you well quickly. The Eskimos, when I was there, they took caribou and they beat it into a mince. Then they roll it and roll on seal blubber and then bury it 6 inches under the ground. And they let it sit there from 5 to 6 weeks, sometimes 7, waiting for it to stink. And when it stunk for a half a mile, it was ready. And that's how they told. There was a certain point where they buried it, and there was a certain marker, a landmark, that said, if it stinks this far, it's ready. And they treated it like cookies. And there's enough E. coli in that to kill 5 herds of elephants, according to Science and Medicine. Didn't give me diarrhea. Didn't affect them. It created this incredible body warmth that never left. They would do it in the fall, early fall, late summer, and it would take them all through the season. That bacteria would make them thrive with body heat. Be fabulous. What else? They would take fish and they would rot it. So the salmonella was incredible. And that was candy to them. The children ate it as candy. They stunk. The breath was horrible. But they were the happiest people in the world. And every book, whether they were a doctor or a scientist, anthropologist, archaeologist, who had met the Eskimos has said they're the happiest people that they had ever met. And then I hear this, everybody says, but they live such short lives, 38 to 52. I said, well, if you ate all of your food frozen, you probably have that problem too, because of all the enzymes that are destroyed from freezing. However, before the white man came, before the British, the Americans, and the Russians came, they basically ate 100% raw. When the British brought over their cauldrons, sold it to them, then they started cooking. Back in about the early 1900s, they had developed a cooking 40% of their foods. They still didn't get any diseases, degenerative diseases. The first case of cancer was 1934. The natives, the Indians, Eskimos who lived in the colonized areas, the British colonies, or the American colonies, or the Russian colonies, who had access to and ate the breads and sugars, started developing dental caries in the 1860s. That was their first case of cavities, 1860s. Before that, they had no degenerative diseases, lived 99% on animal matter, and most of it raw.
What was the stinking breath about? Do you think it was just
bacteria? It's bacteria.
They didn't have any dental problems.
Right. It was not dentine at all. It was not the decaying of teeth. It was the bacteria that have that foul odor that's in the intestines. And of course that flows through the blood because your blood flows through the intestines and it leaves off gases and of course you expel it. Like I say in the book, 90% of halitosis is what you eat, is what's in here, not what's in the mouth. So, meats became a focus for me. Of course, for that 20 years, I did it slowly and gradually. I ate maybe raw meat twice a week, whether it was chicken, fish, snake, or beef, or lamb, buffalo, whatever it might be. And that was in 1976, September of 76, that I had the rabbit experience. In 81, I ate a poison mushroom, the death cap. No one has survived who's eaten it. I ate 15 times the amount to kill a person, my size. It made me an invalid for 3.5 years. I crawled on my elbows wherever I had to go. And it was pretty horrific. The only way that I knew that I could recover was to eat tremendous amounts of fat to protect my body and liver as much as possible. I accidentally ate it. It was deformed. You can identify an amanita mushroom because it grows out of a cup right at the dirt line. Well, something had mutated, deformed this bunch of amnias, and the cap was an inch under the ground. And I just moved it around to see if it were right there. So, other than that, it looks like a perfectly edible mushroom. So when researched it, found it was the death cap. And every book that I read said, death usually comes within 10 days and it's welcome. And they weren't kidding. The amount of pain that I went through was tremendous. Every hour on the hour, for 20 minutes, my body would go into muscle spasms. And I mean, cheek, ears, everything turned into a knot. I looked like one curled up knot, like that. And Alonza, who was with me at the time, who I was helping her through cancer, just saw all these knots all over me, and she just started to panic. And I said, no, if I'm going to die, I'm going to die. I'm going to die on my terms. If I go to the hospital, I will be dead tonight. So the only way I'm going to get through this is on my own. So I did something very, very brazen. If you go to a medical professional, they'll say, don't eat anything that's taxing on the liver. Stay away from fats completely. Let's just IV feed you with lots of sugar. So I did just the opposite. I took a stick of butter and a banana, and I ate them 6 to 8 times a day. That's 1.5 to 2 pounds of raw and salted butter a day I ate. And within about 10 days, I was only chronically fatigued. Most of the pain and spasms were gone. 90% of my liver was destroyed and 65% of my red blood cells. But I was alive. Only person on earth known to be alive after eating that much death cap. In fact, those who'd eaten 1/15 of what I had, only 40% of the people who ate 1/15 of what I had have survived. So I made it. Lots of raw fats. So that started me thinking on the tremendous amount of raw fats that were necessary. So I began experimenting with fats with different kinds of diseases, the ones that I thought that would work better, and ate a lot more protein. So in 1982, I started eating raw meats every day. My health started improving very rapidly. Up until April, the most exercise I had done in 19 years was this and roller skating once every 6 weeks. I was in a speech for an hour and a half. All of this is from eating raw meat. Before I went on any diet whatsoever, when I was a child, they called me Fatty Arbuckle. I was very fat. And then when I developed diabetes, I got very skinny. I could never keep on muscle weight, and I had the regular Jewish type diet, which was, lots of, starch and carbohydrates. So I looked like a pear, when I was Fatty Arbuckle. And very unattractive. I keep this frame right here by doing no exercise. And when I used to have to look like this, I'd have to exercise 4 hours a day, every other day. Now with raw meat, you don't have to. I had one client, Tony Plana, who's an actor, you probably have seen him a lot. Plays minor roles a lot on TV. He played the Davison role in, El Salvador. When he came to me, he was 25 years old, hooked on cocaine. He had been a real Casanova up to that time. Sex drive went out the window. And that was part of his magnetism, feeling that sexual prowess. So he was reduced as a personality to this timid little individual. And he had always had a teenage body that never matured or developed. Put him on raw foods, got him off of cocaine easily, doing great. In 82, when I started eating raw meat on a daily diet, I suggested that he also eat raw meat on a regular basis, daily basis. Within 2 years, his body was all of a sudden full, just like, he'd been working out a lot. He loved it, and he went to getting better and better roles in films, until he was, aside Robert Redford and, I forgot what that movie was, what's that little island down there? Cuba. And he got that role, and that was because he looked better. He looked stable. He looked more powerful. And this is just by eating raw meats and all raw foods. But that increased. Now, I had him eating raw foods from 1977 to 1982 with only eating raw meats a couple of times a week. When he started eating it every day, within 2 years, he was fully matured and developed. And he was already, 32? When he started eating raw meats on a daily basis. So by the time he was 34, his body was able to develop because it got the proteins it needed. Finally, after 20 years of experimenting with all these foods, I felt, hey, I'm on to something here. So I sat down and spent 5 years writing the book called We Want to Live. And I thought, okay, I'm not going to bore anybody with a lot of facts and a lot of information about nutrition in a stale way. I'd write it in a story form, tell my story, tell other case examples within the story. And when I finished that, my editor said, you can't do this. You can't give that information and not give at least some clues how people can help themselves with this diet. You can have people upset. So I wrote volume 2 of the book. That took me longer than volume 1. It took me almost 3 years to write the second part. It covers over 200 common diseases and thousands of remedies, raw food remedies, to reverse those conditions. The thing I want to caution everybody is that Rome wasn't built in a day. And when you reconstruct something, it takes time to disassemble it, to reassemble it. So even though your ailments may seem to get better right away, it still takes a long time to completely reverse and heal. Let me give you an example. I had the radiation and that affected my spine. Up until a month ago, the furthest I could bend my back, because it cauterized. That radiation is a high temperature element. That's not exactly, but it will help you understand. High temperature element that causes like clay to fuse and become hard. Does that to the bones. So I've always been restricted on bending back this far. This is as far as I could bend back after the chemotherapy, the radiation. I went through a spinal meningitis about a month ago, started a month ago. Also meningitis. So I had spinal meningitis and meningitis. Now the doctors will freak you out and say, if you have meningitis or spinal meningitis, you'll be like polio, you'll be crippled, you'll be stupid for life. So if I listen to them, I'll poison myself with lots of antibiotics to kill that bacteria, the meningi, and then what happens? I'll be well, of course. It doesn't work like that, does it? So I completely ignore them. I went through spinal meningitis and meningitis for 19 days. I was crippled in bed for 2 days. I could barely move. The pain was excruciating all throughout my spine, down to my knees, coughing up tons of mucus. I had a beach towel that I filled with mucus for that 19 days. And got rid of lots of poisons in that time. And then all of a sudden I said, well, now I've got the test. Here, did I get better or did I get worse? Did I get stupid? And now I can go back that far. That's a tremendous arch where I wasn't able to do it before. I could strain and only get that far before. So the disease is a cure, as long as you're feeding yourself properly. Don't be afraid of pneumonia. Don't be afraid of meningitis. Don't be afraid of gonorrhea. Don't be afraid of any of those. Just means that you have toxicity in that area of your body, and it will help it remove. Now, to prove that, in certain circumstances, I had the cases of polio, a person with polio in there. As long as her poliomyelitis was prominent and a high amount of it in her blood, she healed. As long as she was with the medical profession and taking, people got well. When the bacteria went low, people did not progress. So the lab person did some experiments with the byproducts in the body when the bacteria levels were high. Found that normally if somebody has an area of their body that requires a dissolution of tissue, your body forms solvents from fats and alcohols that your body will make from carbohydrates. Take those solvents and it'll dissolve that tissue or that debris. The byproduct of that is almost identical to turpentine, highly toxic in the body. They used to give turpentine for certain conditions, which is like giving, strychnine, to help poison the condition out of your system. But what that does, it poisons the system, so it stops that detox in that area because they have to deal with that poison that's going into the body. Hold on a minute. When the bacteria was present, that turpentine-like substance was minuscule. Yet the same amount of dissolution of tissue occurred. If parasites were involved, there was hardly any toxicity at all as a byproduct of the parasites eating that decaying tissue. Their excrement was 1/100th less toxic than that solvent byproduct turpentine in the system. So, you got parasites? Give them to me. I'll take them. I like parasites. I like bacteria. I'll take them all. And like I said, because I had the vagotomy pyeloplasty, which means they severed the vagus nerve to my stomach, I had no hydrochloric acid. The hydrochloric acid is not your savior from bacteria, as the doctors and nurses like to postulate. E. coli, Salmonella, trichinosis, Campylobacter, all of those that they're pointing the finger at, it's like pointing the finger at the vulture and the crow and the worms. They didn't create that decaying tissue that they're eating. They didn't kill that animal, that creature that they're eating. They're preventing the planet from becoming a gaseous, toxic cesspool. So pointing the finger at those bacteria and those parasites is absolutely absurd. If you have decay in your body, let them do the work. Stop eating the things that are creating decay in your body that require the bacteria and the parasites that don't go along with feeling good. And nobody is going to, a major detox is going to feel well. But that's all part of the process of getting well. And I tell everybody, your body's like New York City. It's been around a long time. It needs replumbing. It needs, everything. So you take it apart piece by piece and you put it back together piece by piece. It takes a long time. I keep getting healthier every year. I'm 51 now. It's fantastic. It doesn't stop. But I know that I still can be healthier. When I can bend back and touch the floor, I'll know that I've gotten to where I want to get, health-wise. So healing and regeneration is a lifetime process. But it's better to go toward health than to go away from it. So it's your choice.
You were talking about major detoxifications that look like diseases. Well, if a person was, say, like 80% raw, let's say they were doing an occasional cooked meal still, how would they know whether it was something clearing out, like a retracing, or
something that they're eating in that 20% bad.
Exactly.
Well, when something is deep-seated, a pathological condition in your body, that's from a long time ago. If, let's say, you're getting nauseous, low in energy, even fatigue for a period of time, that could be from what you're eating at present. If you're eating 80%, your body has enough nutrients to keep up with any amount of toxicity that's going to be created, so it won't cause degeneration unless you're poisoning yourself with something real serious, like salt, too much salt, or too much of any drug, chemical that can damage the system.
So in general, if it's not like a really bizarre thing coming out, then you look more toward the 20%. If it's fatigue or something.
Right, yeah. Or nausea, or irritability.
You're wrong in that case. Your meat and your fat.
It's just best to do that because the amount of toxicity that's formed from raw fats is tremendous. The lipid oxides that are formed, and they're carcinogenic when they collect in a body for 40 to 60 years. And you have the protein toxins that are formed from your cooked meats too. So it's basically true. Cooked meats, meats are poison when cooked, but when they're not cooked, they're just the opposite. Yes?
I'm at Ebola, which basically, I guess, liquefies the organs before the body dies. What transpires in that process that causes?
Well, I haven't directly studied it, so I'll just have to theoretically approach, or broach the question. Ebola is similar to, from my limited investigation of it, similar to mushrooms come from mycelium. Very similar to that. Mycelium Ebola is mycelium of the human system. Mycelium in plants goes around and melts dead roots. Ebola can go through your system and cause a melting of all tissues that have hardened, like cirrhosis of the liver or multiple sclerosis. A lot of people have a lot of drying networks of veins that have actually blocked and built up and hardened, just like your colon can become impacted. The veins and arteries and systems and capillaries are so blocked that they actually close off. Then your body will grow veins in and around. If Ebola gets in there, from what I understand, it can melt all the old tissue. But if what you have in your body is nothing healthy, you're going to melt your whole system. Anywhere where there's decaying or hard tissue. Of course, again, the end product of Ebola is less toxic than any other kind of body solvent-related toxicity. It is still tremendous. So Ebola is not I would say I'd stay away from that bacteria until you got really well. Yes?
Then what causes, people, you read those cases about people getting E. coli, getting sick and dying, and undercooked meat, and these children in the swimming pool, and,
They're pointing the finger at the wrong thing, like the 124, 25 people with the Jack-in-the-Box incident. That meat was cooked.
That's right.
It was cooked. It was not raw.
Wasn't it undercooked, though?
You can say undercooked. E. coli, according to science, is destroyed at 197 degrees, 179 degrees, something like that, incapacitated. If you take a hamburger as thick as Jack-in-the-Box makes it, and you throw it on the grill for as long as they do it, even 15 seconds, it reaches that temperature. Unless it's frozen. Doesn't make any difference. It's cooked at a high enough temperature that it's not going to be the same. Now, if you take that hamburger that you've cooked, and let's say it's a little raw in the center, and you let it sit for 24 hours, that E. coli that forms is not a natural E. coli. It's like me taking a herd of elephants, burning the hell out of them, and watch them stampede. They will wreak havoc because they're no longer a stable, balanced creature. So it'll storm through the body. Raw E. coli is not a problem. If it were, the Eskimos and the cavemen would have been dead, and man would never be around. E. coli is 99% of the bacteria in your intestines. Without it, you could not manufacture your B vitamins, nor synthesize your amino acids. You would have no immune system without the E. coli in your colon. They are just wanting to point the finger at somebody other than the chemicals, other than the process of your cooking foods. They're about manufacturing. The medical profession is about drugging. They don't want to point the finger at themselves, the creators of it. They're going to point the finger at anything natural that they can. It's like, let's say you go into Beverly Hills. There's been a big robbery, and there are a bunch of black people on the street. Who do you think is going to get blamed? That's basically what the medical profession and science are doing. They're just pointing the finger at the vultures, the crows, and the worms.
Then what's making
people sick?
Yeah.
The toxicity that collects from cooked foods or from chemicals, preservatives, pesticides. Let's say you get a pinhead worth of chemicals, let's say preservative, in a week's period. To a system that has no good immune system, that can cause a poisoning of a particular area of the body, let's say in the liver or the intestines. Let's say it destroys all of that tissue for about the circumference of a quarter. Once that decay goes underway, E. coli, Salmonella, Campylobacter, depending upon the tissue there, is going to thrive on that tissue. But you don't blame the bacteria that eats up the decay. It's not the fault of the bacteria. It's what caused the decay in the system. And they're not looking at that at all. And yet if you look at the work of Pottinger, with the cats and with humans, feeding them cooked, feeding them raw, great tissue health with raw, disease, and eventual extinction on the cooked. And my work bears out the same stuff, the same results. That it's cooked foods and chemicals that are poisoning people, that are causing these reactions, and they're just blaming it on the bacteria. I mean, why does syphilis come out? Why does poliomyelitis come out? If you observe that tissue, it's because that tissue is having a problem. There's a decay in that tissue. So why then is the bacteria the problem? It's not. Yes?
It's on another topic. Red meat, I've heard about phosphorus and about creating acidity in the body and thus pulling calcium from the bones, which is of major concern to women in osteoporosis.
In cooked meat, that is very true. Raw meat is not.
So there have actually been tests on this, real rigorous science that shows that this is the case. With cooked.
Well, I don't know what you call rigorous. If you talk about a university doing it, yes, studies have been done on animals. If you look at Pottinger's work with the 900 cats, you'll see that all of the bones and organs, there was no leaching at all of any of the tissues, including the bone, the cartilage, or the tendons, any of the animals who received completely raw meat. The control groups that ate either some pasteurized milk or some cooked meat or some condensed milk, the different control groups that he experimented with, there was bone disintegration, degeneration in every one of those. But in the raw group, there was none.
Okay, nothing has been done with humans, though, to gauge this.
Well, he did. He did. He was an MD, he could get away with it.
And so he found the same results?
The same results, yes. Right. And Price, Dr. Price, who was a dentist, traveled all over the world studying different cultural groups. And because he was a dentist, that's where his focus was on the teeth and the bones. And what groups had osteoporosis and what groups had, dental caries and which didn't. Now, he didn't focus on raw and cooked. He focused on indigenous people's diet. If they changed their diet, they had problems. But it was mainly toward, cooking more and processing the foods more. But I've seen that, let me give you an example. Fellow's 56 years old, has maybe 9 teeth left in his mouth, and they all have extensive decay in them, all loose, hanging there. Been a vegetarian for about 15 years, 16 years, maybe 17 years, 15 to 17 years. Went on this raw diet, lots of raw meat. And this is a difficult thing because this guy lives in a house that's vegetarian. So he's not allowed to bring his meat in. He has to go buy it, put it in the cooler, go out in his car and eat it. His teeth have stabilized. They're not moving around anymore in his mouth, and he doesn't have all the pain unless he eats something with salt in it, like lots of cheese with salt in it, salted cheese. Even if it's raw, it causes him some dental problems. In my situation, I was supposed to lose all of my teeth by the time I was 24. My mother lost hers by the time she was 32. My teeth, after chemo and radiation, my gums bled. All I had to do was go like this and it bled. My teeth were just hanging. I could just move any of them like this. They wanted to pull all of them. I said, don't you get near me. When I started eating the meat on a regular basis in 82, all the red disappeared. My teeth became stable. Not only once in a while will I have a certain detox because I had a lot of mercury fillings. And that mercury poisoning is a problem. So sometimes when I go through a mercury detox, I can tell it's a mercury detox because I'll start tasting the mercury and start getting nauseous. During that time, I may have a little loose tooth or a little abscess in the gum. And I should have lost all my teeth, 17 years ago. And the meat stopped it. I have all of my own teeth.
Can I ask just one other question? Is this more of a healing type of diet if you're in a problem situation, or is this a real maintenance, continued health situation that really just is good for all conditions at all times of your life? Okay,
through my experience, it's the latter. It's good for all conditions.
Who are on this diet, that there are numbers, I'm a certain scientist, so I like to see numbers.
That's good. Yeah.
Are there people who, it's just not testimony, but folks who have, like you, have been on the diet for a long, long time, that you can actually see changes over a period of time?
How much time?
5 years.
Oh, plenty. Probably around 3,000. Some as far back as 20 years. Like Alonzo, who I mentioned in the book, she had 63 tumors in her body when she came to me. I was young into it. This was 81, right before I ate the poison mushroom, so I wasn't eating meat every day. And she came in the door And she was only 35 years old, had a 13-year-old boy at home, a young husband, and she was just white, and her flesh hung like that. 35 years old, it looked like she was 60. Although she was a vegetarian for 14 years and her face looked young, but the rest of her body didn't, and she shook like this. When I opened the door, I thought, oh my God, I can't help this person. And it worked. So many times I've said, it will not work for this person. It will not work for this person, and it did. The only people now, and there are some people that have come and said, it's going to work for this person, and it didn't. All of those people had extensive medical therapies, chemo, radiation, or surgery of some sort. And finally, just this last year, I ran across some research by Hardin B. Jones, who was emeritus medical physicist and physiologist at Berkeley. And he concluded in the late 70s, or mid and late 70s, that from his research of cancer, the cases that refused, the individuals who refused any kind of therapy, lived an average of 12 years. Those who received either chemotherapy, radiation, or surgery, or all three, or any combination, lived an average of 3.5 years. So when they tell you that they are going to extend your life, they are absolutely lying, whether they realize it or not. And they're very miseducated. They're educated by the pharmaceutical industry who's selling a product. Most doctors really don't know the truth because they stay stupid purposely. They don't want to know. And this is published information. Hardin B. Jones went before quite a few court cases and through the legislature and testified on all of that document, which he documented for like 23 and 28 years for different particular systems, and said that medical treatment should be avoided at all costs. It'll shorten your life by 3 times. Yes?
So I'm thinking about toxins and chemicals in meats. Do you use organic meats? Do you think that's important? What do you think about that?
Organic meats is always better, because if the animal has had to use its fats to deal with toxicity, that means that that's not going to be available for us. Now, in my lab tests, when I was doing them about 13 years ago, on the difference between organic meat and non-organic meat, found that in the organic meat, there was a lot more fats and proteins utilized. In the individuals who ate inorganic meats, there was a lot more fat combined with toxins. The body knew enough not to release those, not to digest it. It was almost as if the body passed it to the body whole, undigested. We were very impressed with that, and we ran that one 6 times in a 2-year period. So I would say that that research was done starting 13 years ago and was ended about 10 years ago. So that research existed for the amount of pollution that was in those animals now. I mean then. What it is now, and from what I understand, the extent of pollution that's being fed back to those to cows now is increased probably by 2-fold. Back then it was probably 2%. Now it's like 8 to 10%. So going back and doing the tests now, I don't know how they would be. And my lab guy died last year, so to get somebody who's knowledgeable and who can go through and knows what to look for, I don't know where I'm going to find it. I have one fellow up in this area, Doug Haller, that's may be able to help. Brilliant scientist. He's trying to get a team of people together. So we're going to see. So I would say organic is always better, but I've been eating inorganic because I've been traveling around and camping in the sequoias. That's why I'm here. I thought I'd drop by and say hello. Yes.
I wonder if you would share what your diet is like right now. Yeah.
On this trip or in general?
No, in general.
In general, I am going to say that I eat when I feel like eating, and I eat what I feel like eating at the time. So I'm pretty instinctive. During meningitis, when I was going through that, I was less instinctive and more intellectual. Maybe I'm just too anal retentive. Because I know certain facts, I subvert my own instincts and say, no, you're not going to have that. You're going to have this. Because I know that this will work. And then I give my body what it wanted, later. Or at another time of the day. Basically, though, I've evolved to a diet which is during the fall and winter and early spring, 1 piece of fruit a day. Very little carbohydrate. I have a tendency to get manic if I have more than that. A little too high. When I was a vegetarian, it was great because I thought it was leading me to spirituality. But now that I know that it diffuses and confuses my thinking, and I had a tremendous amount of difficulty, and I like to diverge, and in my talks, as you see, I'll pull out this element, but I can even bring it back before I can ever find my way back, and bring it right back to where I wanted it. So I limit my, yes?
To clarify, because when you say fruit...
Sweet fruit.
Sweet. Okay.
Sweet or acid fruits. Anything with high carbohydrate.
Like avocado, tomato would not be...
No, those would be different. Those I'm talking about sweet fruit. Sweet or acid fruit, anything with high sugar content. Limit that to 1 a day. And I always eat it with a fat to slow it down. Now, not everybody has to go along with that, but anybody who has a sugar problem, I suggest that they do it. Diabetes, hypoglycemia, any type of sugar problem, mania, do it. Have fat with it. Slow it down so it doesn't cause the brain
So if you're
problems.
making a smoothie with a banana, you make sure to put some butter, raw butter, or some raw oil.
You've already got the eggs.
The egg that's right.
Eggs is tremendous amount of cholesterol. It's not a problem. I try to eat from 1 to 3 pounds of meat a day. There are days when I won't eat any meat, but it's very rare anymore. When I was more acidic throughout my tissues and I wasn't as clean, I couldn't eat as much meat. It would make me nauseous. It would repulse me. So this is where I'm evolved to now. That doesn't mean that anybody can get to that, overnight. Some people can. And they progress health-wise very quickly.
How important really are the vegetables, have you found?
Pardon?
How important really are the raw vegetables?
I
noticed,
whole vegetables?
Raw meat, I'm not craving them, and this is I should.
Raw whole vegetables?
Yeah.
Well, what I found over the years is that they will prevent an appetite for meat, raw meats, any type of meat really, because the human digestive tract starts off in an acid solution in the stomach. It's 80% acid through the small intestines and almost 100% acid in the colon. A vegetarian animal takes 48 hours, 2 to 4 stomachs, and 60 times the enzymes, or 60,000 times the enzymes to disassemble the cellulose molecule to digest vegetation. In the human body, we're less than half of all of that. So what happens is, we just secrete all these alkaline fluids in whole vegetables as it goes through. And when it reaches the sigmoid colon, it's not even half digested. So what happens is those alkaline fluids neutralize the acid bacteria that will digest the foods that you need, the meats. So you won't be able to digest them properly, so you're repulsed by them. So I say stay away from from whole raw vegetables.
So if you ended up basically raw meat, raw butter, and honey, occasional piece of fruit, you'd probably be okay? Is that
basically, definitely.
I'm doing that more and more, and I'm not real domestic anyway, so who wants to do the salad things you think you should, you know?
Yeah, no, it's harmful, basically, unless you have an impacted colon and impacted small intestine that could utilize that little bit of alkalinity, maybe in a salad once every day or once every 2 or 3 days, just enough to neutralize some of that over-acidity.
And are you getting the vitamin C from the meat then? Is that...
There's vitamin C in everything,
okay.
You know, and plenty. You don't need, if you're on a cooked diet, you need tremendous amounts of all those vitamins. When you're on a raw diet, you don't need a lot. However, there's lots of vitamins and lots of elements, enzymes, minerals that you need as a supplement, and you can get them in vegetable juice. And what happens with the vegetable juice goes in and alkalizes the stomach for a short period of time. But because of all the vagus nerve going to the stomach, your body can acidify itself in 10 seconds. So the vegetable juice is absorbed by the time it hits the end of the duodenum. So it doesn't interfere with the intestinal tract at all. It alkalinizes the blood and takes care of all those acids that are being dumped into the blood, into the lymph system from your body, removing toxicity, all those toxic acids from cooked foods or from damage, chemical or bruising or anything. Yes?
How do you get over the psychological barrier of sinking your teeth into raw flesh? I've been there.
If you stay away from whole vegetables, it'll take care of 75% of the repulsion. If you drink vegetable juices, you eat lots of fat, you're going to find that you have easy way of eating it. It's much more palatable. It's that eating the whole raw vegetables that causes the problem. It destroys, neutralizes the acid bacteria in your colon. And that addresses your whole body. Say, can't handle meat. Makes me a little more repulsed. If you eat it and you can't digest it, what will it do? It'll putrefy in your intestines. Then you have lots of bacteria that want to go to work to detox you. So we're going to end up with diarrhea, all kinds of problems. Now, about 12% of people who go on this diet, it changes in my exposure to people. It changes because the more people I'm exposed to, the test changes. But right now, it averages about 12% of everybody who starts on a raw diet that includes raw meat has what's called a bacterial food poisoning. It's not a poisoning, it's an intense detox. Now, a lot of the lab tests, most of them proved that the liver was heavily detoxed, and you finally got meat, proteins to be able to allow the liver to cleanse. So what does it do? It dumps those toxins into the bowels, and they're highly toxic, highly acidic, and they can burn and damage the intestinal walls. So the body floods fluids in there, and you have diarrhea, you have nausea, you have all those so-called bacterial food poisoning problems. But people who aren't on a raw meat diet have those too. You know? So every time they pointed at the guy who eats raw meat, or, you know, any kind of raw meat, whether it's fish or whatever, it's like, he got that at the sushi bar. Well, what about the guy who's not eating raw meat? They have it more frequently than people who are on a raw meat diet. It's a terrible prejudicial, perspective. But not something to worry about. Anyway, to finish that question, what was the question now? I mean, I need some honey. The psychological. Stay away from the whole vegetables because they'll cause a problem. For those of you listening to this, not seeing me, I just put some honey in my mouth. That's why I mumbled. Also, parsley juice will help increase your appetite for meat. Pineapple will help increase the appetite for meat. not over an abundance of pineapple, but a little bit every day will help increase your appetite for it. Yes?
So my experience was just the willingness to try it,
Mm-hmm.
and then to see how it felt in my body.
Right.
And I was shocked.
Mm-hmm. That's how most people can do it, but you have to understand some people are so compromised in their digestive tract with their bacteria that they actually get repulsed when they taste it. When it goes into their mouth, their body's telling them not a good thing to do right now. And I found that removing whole vegetables from the diet within 2 weeks to a month, they're really into the meat, and they stop eating the vegetables. Now I have one woman who's a health professional who now postulates the diet, but she had a difficult time on the diet. She had to have that raw salad every day, or else she's going to get constipation. Had to have it. Now the husband was completely on the diet, not eating the vegetables, whole vegetables, only the juice. Great. The guy had chronic fatigue. He's a stockbroker, lots of high pressure. Everything's easy for him now. Got all the strength, developed muscles where, without having to exercise, and a different person entirely. And his wife, who's the health professional, is having all this difficulty because of all the brainwashing. She didn't have the whole salad, she was going to be constipated. So as long as she had the whole salad, it was going to interfere with bacteria. And what is feces? 80 to 90% bacteria. It acts like it builds and grows and grows, and it becomes like a sponge. So it takes that little toxic fiber, the toxic matter that would be like a bullet, like a rock in your system, and aerates it into a substance that's easy to move through. If that bacteria is destroyed, you end up with constipation. So, she'd eat the salad every day and destroy that bacteria, that acid bacteria that would help blow up the feces. She had constipation. Finally, after a year and 3 months, I said, listen, Marilyn, you got to dump it. You got to stop. Just try it. I don't care if you suffer constipation for a week. Put some butter up there, inject some melted butter up there. Anything you can do to make it easy to go and see what happens. In 2 weeks, her constipation was gone. Gone.
So it's not the fiber that does it. It's the
If you're on a cooked diet, the fiber helps as a broom. Wish all that toxic substance. It's all melted matter. It's like dust, made into food substances that you eat. And cooked meats that are so highly toxic, it helps to move them through faster because there's nothing to digest it well, so it sits.
So the diet of primarily the protein and the fats.
Fats, right.
Keeps the bacteria as high as possible, and that in itself is what keeps
correct.
It going through.
If you eat too much cheese, you might have a little problem without butter or without avocado or something else.
And maybe, I also wanted you to kind of finish your diet that you got to the meat. But
so very little fruit. I eat tremendous amounts of fat, and I eat fat almost every time I eat. I learned that from the Eskimos. They eat 50% of their diet is fat. When I was doing my experiments with health, if you make 50% of the diet fat, you heal 5 times faster.
Now, is this amount or in calories? Or this is actual amount?
This is actual physiological amount. Yes.
That's a good question. Well, in relationship to that question, is it okay to eat the fat on the meat?
Raw.
The raw fat on the meat?
Let me give you an example. I have clients all over the world who cannot get butter. I say, even better than butter, get the meat from the fat. The fat from the meat. Eat it. It's easier to eat. It's already been assimilated through an animal's body in a way that constitutes into tissue. Butter is like Butter's a little different. The calf has to take it and deal with it, and then make it into fat within their body. They feel healthier. It's easier to digest than the butter or the cheese, and works a lot quicker.
Meat, though, wouldn't the toxins go into the fat? Or
Yeah, but like I say, the fat still passes through.
Right. It's like the fat is both protecting you and maybe carrying those toxins, but it's
Right.
it out.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So then I eat fat with everything. Tremendous amount.
So what kind of fat?
Well, it depends. When I get raw cream, I'm going through a tremendous amount of raw cream. I love raw cream. 16 ounces a day, raw cream. Pint. I'll still have a little butter, maybe a half a stick, or an avocado. I eat very fatty meats.
Half a stick of butter a day? Or
A day. We're talking a day.
If you have the cream, though.
If I have the cream.
If you don't have the cream,
Like I don't have the cream right now and I'm traveling and I've got my raw butter in my cooler.
So you do more butter?
I'm going through almost a pound a day.
And you do that.
But I'm not exercising, which I'm not used to. I'm not used to. I've got a girlfriend over here that loves to exercise. Come on, let's go hiking. Let's go hiking. I say, wait a minute. I'm used to taking a nap. That's my exercise. No, we got to go exercise.
Olive oil, voyage, flax oil, the cold press.
They're great solvent makers, but they will not stabilize or make you strong. 99% is made into solvents. So remember that. If you want to detox all the time, eat those oils often. If you just want to stabilize and get healthy and well, stay away from those oils.
do more of the animal fat.
Correct. Yeah. Because then you'll do a little of everything.
And everything you just said you could mix with the raw honey, right? The cream, the butter.
Unheated honey, not raw honey. Unheated honey.
Unheated. Yeah.
Unheated honey.
Unheated.
Yeah.
I found some honey today at the growers market that was kept in a hot room from 80 to 90 degrees.
That's fine. As long as it doesn't go over 104, 105. 104, really. Yes.
You mentioned your liver was 90% destroyed in the early 80s. What's happened with that?
It's all well, no pain, nothing. I digest fine. I'm going through a pound of butter a day. I can go through 16 ounces and more of fat a day. It handles it like that.
Any perception of a rejuvenation on that?
Oh yeah, it's completely, I can tell it's completely restored.
The
Yes.
fats don't collect in your arteries, there's no cardiovascular problems.
Well, only when you cauterize a cholesterol molecule it no longer has an exchange of ions. It's like if I take clay. You know how malleable it is? Mm-hmm. That's the way fat is, raw. Once you heat that clay, it's no longer porous. It no longer exchanges moisture. It no longer can swell, change shapes. It is solidly placed in that shape. And it's a different shape. So the higher temperature you go, you can get it into glass. So when you heat a cholesterol molecule or fat that can be made into a cholesterol, you've got a hardened substance that in 20 to 40 years in the body will be completely solid because there's no exchange of ions, will completely be solid, and if it's made up of a lipid that has lubricated any of your veins or arteries, that area is going to harden and crack. When it's raw, it always stays fluid at the human body if that lipid is utilized for 90 years. It does not change.
Would someone in the tropics eat the same way as someone in this temperature climate?
That's an interesting question. In South America, in the area, they eat tremendous amounts of fats to cool themselves. And there are people who say, if you're a a cold climate, that's where you eat the fats. It's a coolant or a body temperature, heating.
And what you're also saying is basically we're carnivores.
Yes. Basically,
in the tropics, no matter where.
our digestive system shows. When I was in Malaya, which is the island right next to Tahiti, they would take raw meat or raw chicken or raw fish, and they dice it. They take coconut, and they wring out the fat. If it's an older, mature, hard, meaty coconut, they'll shred it and wring out the fat. And they'll take a half of a lime, which is an acid fruit, and they'll mix that with the coconut cream, dice some tomato, which is acid, again, mix it with the fish or the chicken, and dice up some with the head lettuce, regular iceberg lettuce, which has the great opiates in it. And because it is almost a neutral vegetable, it's not highly alkaline. They call it a waste lettuce. I don't know why they call it a waste because it doesn't have all the chlorophyll of other ones. It doesn't have all the vitamin E. It's got other substances which are wonderful. They make that into a mix, and it's so delicious. It's all raw. The chicken and the fish are all raw. It's all raw. Phenomenal.
Where is it?
In Malaya.
The lime juice has a tendency to marinate.
It's so
It starts pre-breaking down the meat.
Exactly what you just
Yeah.
described at a friend's house.
So what does the lime juice do? You're
It
saying
just kind of marinates.
It kind of marinates the meat, starts breaking it down a little ahead of time. Yeah. Exactly as your body would do inside.
That's good.
Yeah, it's delicious. It's incredible. I mean, I eat it 3 times a day. I'd never heard of that recipe. So I was eating it 3 times a day there.
Like a good food and opium, man.
Yes.